Waiting for one person. Good morning, everyone. We are scheduled to begin at 8:30 a.m., but we are waiting for one of our task members. So we'll be putting you on hold for a few minutes until they get here.
Are you recording?
Yes, I'll double check.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Subtask Force second meeting. So for everyone who's on the line, we'll go ahead and start with introductions here in the Subtask Force meeting. I'm Lisa Yellow Eagle, attorney and representative for Southern Ute Indian Tribe.
Hello, good morning. I'm Tisha Yazzie, the Water Resource Director for the Yuman Ute Tribe, and I am the representative for the Yuman Ute Tribe.
Good morning, Steve Wolf with Southwestern Water Conservation District.
And I'm Celine Hawkins with the Nature Conservancy.
Becky.
Oh, Becky Mitchell, State of Colorado.
200 others in the room.
Sure. And we have others in the room as well, members of the public. If they would like to introduce themselves, please go ahead.
I'm Peter Ortego, General Counsel for the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe, sitting at the table only because I need to use my computer.
Beth Van Verst, General Counsel for Southwestern Water Conservation District.
I'm Mo Rock Programs Coordinator for Southwestern Water Conservation District. And Shannon Mullane, I'm with the Colorado Sun.
Great. Good morning, everyone. And we do have our the Drought Task Force facilitator online as well. She is helping us out today. Do you want to introduce yourself, Kelsey?
Sure. I'm Kelsey McElroy. I'm the project manager and facilitator for the Langdon group, who is serving the task force. And as a real quick announcement, if you are watching online, please use the link on the agenda that is posted on the website for this meeting today. There you go.
Great. Thank you. All right. So we have a short agenda today. Our meeting is scheduled for 8:30 to 10:30. And the two items that we have on the agenda today cover questions that were posed during the last meeting. So first, we have the hypothetical that was posed. In the perfect world, what would the tribes love to do with their water if there were no hurdles or challenges to overcome? And so the thought is that both tribal representatives would provide an answer to that. And then we would go into discussion on what the existing hurdles are for the tribes to use that water. And maybe we can go through a process of putting those into buckets of whether they're policy issues, technical issues, funding issues, and so on, and see if we can come up with some potential recommendations for the legislature. And those were the two items on the agenda today. Is everyone okay with that? Do you want to add anything else?
Felt good.
Okay, great. Agenda approved. We can begin our meeting. And as I mentioned, we're going to cover the first hypothetical. In the perfect world, what would the tribes love to do with their water if there were no hurdles or challenges to overcome? Letitia, do you want
Do you want me
to
to
go ahead and start?
Okay, so in a perfect world, I guess, one thing I would like to point out first is, of course, uses evolve over time, and initially, when the ALP was, started, they envisioned, another community in Farm and Ranch on the east side of the reservation. And, in today's world, the tribe would like a pipeline from Lake Night Horse and for the many needs, municipal, agricultural, industrial, to use throughout the reservation. And the one thing that I learned yesterday, we had a workshop on climate change, and there was a tribal elder there, and she spoke to the fact that, water, and it's been said over and over again, water is life, water is the center of everything. And, in these times, it provides the tribe with opportunities for economic development. And, right now, the Dolores project, it provides, the water is used to provide jobs for the tribal members through the casino, the farm and ranch enterprise, and also the womanity construction. And right now, the tribe is the #1 employer in Montezuma County. And one of the things that the tribe is getting into is renewable energy. And, they have a potential hydropower project, and there's several solar power farms that are coming in the near future. And then looking at the Mancos River, I heard yesterday about stories about the Mancos Ranch and how big of a alfalfa or hay operation there was there. And little background on the Mancos, the water rights there were subordinated to 1985. So that's one of the projects the tribe is interested in, is restoring that ranch there on the Mancos River. And then on the San Juan River, we talked about expanding the farm and ranch and adding additional pivots for hay or any whatever for the livestock herd there. And also, what water would provide us is a second source from the Animas River if there was in times of drought. When I looked at this question in a perfect world, you looked at all the possibilities. And of course, there's ideas out there like building a resort, golf course, building on economic development. And so I think this question is really there's no limit to it, and whatever the tribe wants to do and can do, that's how I see this question.
It is. Okay. I think our team looked at that question as well with the same lens, that it is a limitless question. If in the perfect world, the tribe would really want a community that was similar to the communities around them, or in other areas, they would want a thriving town with all of the amenities. They would want a thriving economy. They would want to have the ability to provide everything it needs to its tribal members, just as the towns surrounding them do. And so kind of if we look at it in different buckets, let's say economic development, the tribe would want additional infrastructure for commercial areas, for more businesses, restaurants, shopping opportunities. And a lot of that is so that the tribal members and non-Indians in the area wouldn't have to travel to Durango or wouldn't have to travel to Farmington, right? So of course you can't have everything. You still would have to go to larger towns, but it would be nice for the area to have the ability to even go to a few stores. Right now, there's really not that much possibility. And so there's a lot of travel involved with when you need things. So it would be more commercial infrastructure. And under economic development would be the ability to develop more of the natural resources and energy development. And whether that's more oil and gas or fracking or solar, those are all potential development opportunities, but that would fall under the economic development rubric. Some tribal members would like more recreation, right? But again, that would kind of fall under an economic development as well. Marketing or leasing water that the tribe has and doesn't have the ability to use right now, that would also bring in some funding for the tribe to use. And so that would also fall under the economic development rubric. For domestic water supply, there's always the idea to connect more tribal members to clean piped water. Another huge need is housing. We would like to build more housing for tribal members and staff members. Right now, it's really hard to keep staff because there is no affordable housing in the area. And so then staff members have to look to Durango, as far away as Farmington, Bayfield. And as we all know, Colorado is fairly pricey. And so it does get hard to attract people who are not from the area or who are not tribal members. And so that is a huge need, is to have more housing built for both tribal members and staff members. In terms of agriculture, as we talked about during the last meeting, the tribe has an irrigation project, the Pine River Indian Irrigation Project. And it is in need of being rehabbed. There are a lot of repairs that need to be done, and it is a high priority for the tribe. A lot of the tribal members irrigate and use that water. Non-Indians use that water, use that infrastructure, and water is delivered to the town of Ignacio. So that infrastructure really needs to be kept up. And so everyone who depends on the PRIP needs that infrastructure to be rehabbed. And so that is a high priority for the tribe for agriculture and for domestic municipal water use. And what would another thing that would fall under the PRIP would be, well, we'll get to that with the challenges, I guess, but that would be a huge priority for the tribe. And then there's also future agricultural opportunities that the tribe would like to do, such as commercial greenhouses, potential tribal farm. The tribe's water use options team has been meeting regularly and has been discussing how to utilize the tribe's water resources. And food independence is a huge issue, and that comes up a lot. And so that's where the commercial greenhouses has come up. And then the tribal farm as well, that, you know, we see Ute Mountain has a tribal farm and does fairly well when you're getting the water. So that's also been a topic of discussion, but future agricultural opportunities are on the list. Industrial uses. There are a lot of ideas being thrown around, but one idea is a meat processing plant. And the tribe has a buffalo herd, and a lot of tribal members have herds as well. And so there's been discussion on whether that would be a viable option to have for the tribe to have its own meat processing plant. This is at the very beginning of discussion, but this is in the perfect role. It would be great to have a meat processing plant in the area so that people don't have to ship their cattle far distances, pay for that gas and that shipping. When we talk about the environment, of course, the tribe is a project participant in the San Juan River Recovery Implementation Program, partnering with other project participants, including Ute Mountain Ute, Navajo Nation, Hickoria, and many other agencies and organizations to bring back fish from endangered fish status. And so that is a worry for the tribe, and we think about that. And in a perfect world, we want to make sure there was enough funding for it, that make sure that there was enough that the program has the capability to continue without that concern. And then in terms of the environment on the reservation, we would want to see more care for environmental benefits for fish, wildlife, the land, and the plants on the reservation. And so there are some areas on the reservation that the rivers are just not as robust as they used to be. And so those are areas that the tribe is concerned about. And I think that would take partnership with others in the area to try to keep more water in the river. And in the perfect world, as we discussed, the tribe's ability to use its water, the issue that currently comes up in almost every discussion is the fact that the tribe has, as everyone knows, the tribe has not developed its water fully, right? So the tribe has a quantified amount of water, and it's only using a small portion of it. And there are conservation programs in place for water users in the Colorado River Basin and in the state of Colorado that pay water users to forbear the usage of some of that water. And so, but one of the caveats is that when that happens, it must keep more water in the system. That water must be beneficially used before the water user can be paid for that forbearance. And we understand that the idea is that this will keep additional water in the system while we're in this drought and while there's a lot going on with all of this. But the message that is being sent to the tribes, not only in Colorado, but in the Colorado River Basin, is that the tribes need to fully develop their water right now before they're able to participate in those conservation programs. And they need to race to do it, to use their water before everyone else does. and that doesn't really help the whole system. And so I also think something to think about is that once the tribe puts in the effort, the time, the money, all of that, I don't know if they will want to forbear and participate in the conservation programs, because they then used all of those resources to get to that point. So there's some issues there that should be looked at, but the tribe would like to see a program where some sort of program where it is paid to forbear the development of their water for a set amount of time, so that this keeps the water in the system. And the tribe is compensated for not developing their water. And it's not a race to the bottom where they're being forced to develop water quickly, and instead of being able to take their time and figure out what they really need and how they want to put that water to use. But that is the message that seems to be being sent to tribes right now.
Yep.
And so that is, I wasn't sure, that doesn't really fall under the economic development or ag or any of that, but that was kind of an other category, but that's something that has come up a lot recently, actually probably for decades. But those are some of the issues that the tribe would like to see in a perfect world. We did try to keep the conversation to things that we could put, that we are thinking about, that we could potentially put into place in the next, let's say 10 years, 10, 15 years, with the economic development, the ag and things like that, because we would like to see overall just more of a benefit for tribal members to be able to have the same lifestyle that everyone else does, to be able to have piped water, to be able to have food security, to have the options for economic development and jobs. And so that those are the things that we were looking at. See if I missed anything, but yeah, I think that's what we have for now. Did anyone have any questions?
Can I ask sort of a high level question,
Mhm.
basically of both tribes? Tribal water study was done, I think, 2018 or do the tribes sort of agree with the numbers as far as supply and demand that's in that or not? I'm just curious, because when I look at tribal supply and demand, that's where I go. That's kind of the first reference. I'm just wondering if you guys generally agree, and I'm not talking about details, but generally, do you agree?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah. No, all of those numbers came from,
that's what I thought. I'm
Tribes.
to confirm that.
Yeah.
So,
and we worked really closely with Reclamation on all of those numbers.
okay.
That's helpful. That's a helpful question, because I cite those numbers often in terms of and specifically in Colorado, what is settled water rights and what is developed and undeveloped.
Right. And Lisa, maybe for Southern Ute on the PRID, if you had funds to sort of upgrade the PRID project, I assume that would mean you'd consume more water on the Pinos, Los Pinos, and you have the water rights for that. I'm just, and I know that may be a little more detailed, but
Yeah, so I think that the tribe would consume more water, but I think less water would be wasted.
okay.
Because there's a lot of, there are just so many repairs needed that I don't think that everyone is getting their full allocation.
So your diversions might not change much, but more efficient use. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's my understanding and a lot of the repairs that need to be made are also just to make sure that the PRIP remains viable and in use, because there are sections that are on their last legs, literally. I mean, there's I think it's called the Butspa Flume, where the concrete blocks holding up the pipe is just so unstable. And they're very worried that they could, I mean, if it falls, that it would take a lot to get it back up. And so that is actually that piece of the PRIP is one of the highest priorities, and I think we need the tribe has used its own funds to get an engineering firm to assess that structure and design repairs. And so the tribe would need 2.85 million to fix that portion of the PRIP.
Just that one piece.
Mhm. But that supplies, it's upstream, and so that supplies water to a serious amount of acreage below. No one would get their water if that deteriorated to a point that it could no longer be used. And that's one of the sections of the PRIP that our Water Resources Department generally shows on every tour, because it is such a serious concern. But I think that what the tribe has done is, because that's a serious concern for the tribe, they did use their own money to get to a point where if they can get that additional money to fix it, they'll do that, but they're waiting to figure out how to get that additional money. But they've also worked with BIA to develop a list of 18 projects that are, they call it the near-term project priorities. And so after the Blitzball flume, they've come up with a list of 18 smaller projects that need immediate attention. And so those 18 projects would need a total of $12,038,000 to complete those projects. But they are working to our Water Resources Division is working to prioritize what is the most concern and kind of going further down the list, and hopefully they'll be able to find, and then that way there's an amount of funding needed for each project so that they can then work on that next and keep going down that list. But really trying to prioritize what is the highest concern and what is in need of the most repair.
I can't wait to get to our next section of the agenda. I'm trying to not like creep into that in terms of kind of the policy technical, what are the constraints? But one of the questions that I was going to ask was, do you have a list of the projects? And you do. And so I think that was one of the things that is going to be incredibly helpful. So that looks like the constraint is primarily funding.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not necessarily new development. So there's not the issues that surround that. That is like keeping things at a place where people can get the water that they're accustomed to. And so I think that needs to be obviously a priority to figure out the funding component on that.
Well, I also don't want to push us to the next part of the agenda, but Lisa, could you explain why we aren't seeing bipartisan infrastructure or Inflation Reduction Act money coming to PRIP?
So it's my understanding, well, first, the PRIP is a BIA project. And so that's the big difference. It's my understanding that BIA is severely underfunded. And so they don't put a lot of money towards these repairs, even though there is a trust responsibility to do so. The tribe should not be spending its own money. The BIA should be spending the money on those repairs. But the tribe is very concerned and wants to keep this project viable for its tribal members and others. And so they are spending their own money, but there's just not enough. I mean, the tribe doesn't have the money that's needed for that. I think the last BIA estimate to repair and rehab the entire project was 110 million. So the tribe is just trying to focus on the very serious areas of concern. In terms of whether BIL or IRA funding applies, what I've been told by our Water Resources Division is that most of that funding is going to be reclamation projects. And just the BIA project doesn't fall underneath any of those umbrellas that are within those funding.
I would like for us to put on our next agenda item or our next agenda, some movement on this, specifically. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think maybe we need to coordinate between Department of Interior, BIA, and see what walls we can break down, and maybe we need some political help. Maybe we need some state help, and that sort of thing. But I think especially for the 12 million needed for the near-term urgent projects, specifically. And then what I would ask is for Ute Mountain Ute, if there is any way that you could kind of come up with some lists also to make sure that we were pushing it together, kind of projects that need maintenance or operations assistance that BIA specifically hasn't given the attention to that they deserve. And then let's make this an ongoing topic to figure out how do we continue that, because anybody who operates a water system knows that it is far harder to fix something once it's broken than to do the work when it's needed right away. And so I think this is something where, as a team, this drought task force specifically should be able to really put some emphasis on how do we do that. Recognizing that there is that federal trust responsibility, but standing together as a state and the community also, I think needs to be something we focus on. And I don't know what, when we're sitting here as the tribal subcommittee of the drought task force, and they were looking for legislative recommendations. I think it's important to recognize not all solutions lie in legislation, but maybe there are some things that we can do that are in legislation related to this, but some of it is just doing stuff.
So I guess we're into the hurdles section.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. So it's a BIA project. Do any funds, wherever they come from, to fix something, do they have to go to the BIA, or can they come to the tribe and then the tribe does the work? I don't know the bureaucracy involved.
So just as a FYI, there is legislation through the WIN Act, which is the Western Indian Irrigation. I forget what the N stands for. Western Indian Irrigation. Oh, I forget. I'm sorry.
Okay,
but the WIN Act, which gets, I guess Congress is authorized to appropriate a certain amount through the WIN Act for 16 Indian irrigation projects in the West. And that is never fully appropriated. So that's one of the issues. Right now, I think the last amount that Southern Ute received was 130,000. Well, not Southern Ute, PRIP. That PRIP received was 130,000, and it's my understanding BIA bought a backhoe and some equipment, which was needed, but it's not that amount was so small. It really wasn't enough to get to the actual larger repairs that are necessary. And so one of the steps that the tribe has been pushing for is for Congress to fully appropriate the WIN fund so that the tribes who have Indian irrigation projects can receive more funding for their projects. But then on top of that, because that money gets shared with the 16 different Indian irrigation projects, there is still a large need for funding. And then to answer your question specifically on whether, I mean, it would be great if BIA got the funding specifically for PRIP. But I know because the tribe uses its own money as well, that it could also go to Southern Ute, and then they could figure out, I think there is some sort of contract in place for the tribe to do that work.
So if there was some benevolent Warren Buffett wanted to write you a check for $15 million,
Yes.
wouldn't have to go through BIA. Okay.
Yes, water buffaloes, where are you?
I did have a question just about the last agenda item. Is there anything we should know about tribal sort of water quality, cultural uses, or watershed health? I know that we tend to think in terms of supply, but just wanted to make sure I'd ask that.
I'd have to get back to you on the water quality, because that's a different department from our water resources division. I think cultural uses is something I alluded to when I talked about the environmental benefits in terms of making sure that there's enough water for the fish, the river itself, for the plants and for the land, and to make sure that all of those are thought of and protected as well. I think that's kind of all I can say on that.
So what was your exact question? Can you repeat it again?
Is there anything that we should be thinking about in sort of water quality challenges as things are getting drier, cultural uses, or sort of watershed health, and how, you know, forest health, watershed health connects to tribal interest in use of water?
Okay. I know yesterday we were talking about this in the workshop that I attended yesterday, and you know, as you know, they use the water in Ute Mountain, in the actual Ute Mountain. You know, they test the water quality, and for the, you know, Sundance, and making sure that you know, it's top quality. And they also, you know, talk to the point about, you know, how it's managed now. I guess the overpopulation of oak, compared to other, you know, other trees that grow in the forest, and how, you know, I guess how the mountain wasn't really providing as it used to. And yeah, and you know, I think that's for you, Mountain, that's very important, making sure that, you know, they have 2 reservoirs on top of the mountain, and making sure that, you know, the needs for those are also intact. They need to be repaired. They use, you know, that water to for, as I mentioned, the ceremonies that they have, and so make sure that's mentioned.
I want to go back to something Becky, I think, started to ask was, to your knowledge, does Ute Mountain Ute Tribe have sort of a list of projects, upgrades to farm and ranch or whatever, that they would sort of a little more detail?
Right now, the Farm and Ranch is working with what are they called? They're working with some grant writers. I can't remember their exact name right now, but yeah, we do have a project list and a breakdown of, you know, where funding is coming from, and those grant writers, they're helping the Farm and Ranch, you know, and what their exact needs are and how they can fit. So we do have a list. Yes.
I think that would be helpful as we talk about, I'm already starting to work on this task that we gave ourselves. And trying to figure out, okay, where do we put pressure? What are the opportunities on the funding side? And so I think if we could maybe focus at some point soon on that near term urgent and see what we can push forward and put some pressure on the federal government to help with.
And I've got to assume these sort of requests have been made to the federal government, state, whoever previously haven't been successful. So it'd be good for at least for me to understand where those requests have been made and why you were told no or whatever. That's, I think, part of the hurdles.
Yeah, and then that will give us some idea on strategy on how we handle it and maybe what we could do as a state or a group or to address those hurdles.
We also, I remember at the last meeting, we talked a little bit about some changes that the Ute Mountain Ute tribe wanted in its repayment contract on Dolores. Is that still an ongoing policy priority for the tribe? Because that's also a reclamation policy decision, right?
Yes. You know, since we're talking about going into hurdles, I'll start talking about, you know, some of the technical hurdles the tribe has. And the first one is, you know, capacity. Just this year, we started the water resource program. And, you know, we got funding from Walton Family Foundation, the New Venture, and Nature Conservancy. But after, you know, 2 years, the water resource funding, our program is going to need funding again. And, you know, part of that, the team is only going to be me and another assistant. So, you know, that's where we're limited in, you know, even grant writing.
Yeah, we understand the 2-person team.
Yeah.
Great lawyer, what are you talking about? Well, and I think that goes to the challenges realm too of the and I'm trying to think about ways that we can help with that, or is that something that this group can address?
So when does the funding run out for the water resource department?
2 years from May, so 2026.
Okay, so you got 2.5.
Or no,
But 2 from now. Okay.
yeah, 2025. 2025, yeah.
Okay.
Is it still, you know, I'm dating myself here asking this question. Is it still sort of standard policy within federal granting agencies that they'll pay only for capacity that's tagged onto projects and they won't fund like a department? Or has there been any movement with Reclamation, BIA, any of the funding agencies? Or is that still a hurdle?
Yeah, I'm not too sure about that particular question, but
I'm wondering if there could be like a joint team creation or something, or some way that we can help on the technical side of that development. So I think that's probably something on our, you know, ideas to address that parking lot of things to think about between these meetings is maybe what ideas are out there in terms of addressing that.
Well, and CWCB's got their technical assistant grants. I don't know if that's helpful. I know that money is time limited too.
Well, and maybe, and I hate to like commit things, but maybe there's some way that Southwestern can be a part of that too. Maybe not on the funding side. I think we have the funding capabilities, but I'm no longer the director of that agency. So, but I know there was they are looking for grants that are technical assist, like looking for folks to apply for grants for technical assistance.
and then another point I have was just efficiency for the farm and ranch, you know, getting projects to make it more efficient and, you know, having an engineer or someone to help on those. And then another technical hurdle, I guess, is, you know, having a range management plan.
Range management plan for your ranch lands.
The ranch lands, make the whole reservation.
Okay.
Even in the Mancos Canyon, just all the invasive species and one.
Is that something that CWCB would be able to, would that be a technical assistance grant to help with a person, to hire a person for
I don't-
management?
I don't know. I want to look into that. I'm anxious to hear our to-do list from this meeting. It's going to be. This one was easier, the to-do list between the last meeting and this meeting, but I think such is progress, right? This is gonna require a little bit more. So I think I want to look into what the opportunities are. There's a lot of work being done on the state level of analysis of all the funding programs and where folks should go for what. And so I want to make sure we get in touch with the right people. And that may be outside of even the DNR realm, but I don't think it's outside of something that we should be figuring out where we should go for assistance.
Letitia, has Ute Mountain looked at grants from First Nations Development Institute?
I don't believe so, but
They have 5 umbrellas that they provide grants to tribes. And one of them is farming and ag type work. And if I remember correctly, I wasn't too familiar with that umbrella specifically, but I feel like I remember that they funded a group of ranchers at Navajo and helped them with a range management plan.
Mhm.
But I mean, it was a grant that was one of their objectives. The Navajo group of ranchers, that was one of their objectives. So I would suggest looking at their website and kind of reaching out to them to see if they have anything like that.
I think there's some nonprofits that the Nature Conservancy works with that works in this space too. I can bring back a list.
Yeah, and as far as the technical, hurdles, we're still in the works of creating a municipal water system master plan, and also upgrading the SCADA system. So those needs enhancements as well. And those are kind of the technical hurdles that I listed. Be more efficient is a top priority.
Patricia, you said you have funds to hire an assistant
Mhm.
water resource.
It is now listed as of the 4th.
So you're in the process of doing that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of broke mine down into technical, policy, and financial hurdles.
Mhm.
I don't know how you did yours.
I mean, it's different. Yeah, I think it's different for each issue that we thought about, right? So for economic development, I mean, a lot of that is funding to put commercial infrastructure into place, and to find the people who want to open those businesses on the reservation. Another challenge is always the fact that the reservation is checkerboarded. So to find that land and to make sure that that there is land for that infrastructure. Of course, the marketing, the leasing, that's policy that's within the tribe settlement. They are authorized to lease water, but I think there's limits on it. I think the language is that as long as non-Indian counterparts can do the same, something to that effect. So the tribe can't do something that others can't do, basically. Connecting additional tribal members to clean water, piped clean water. Of course, right now we have water stations, but the issues are funding and, again, jurisdictional issues. How many different jurisdictions that the tribe would have to cross in order to make that happen. Building housing for tribal members. Challenges, again, are funding, land availability. Federal regulations were mentioned, and I think that's due to the different land statuses and what needs to be done on the tribal land. Agriculture.
Let's go back.
Oh, yep, go ahead.
Question. So on providing clean water to homes, some rural water supply,
Mhm.
does it not work to have a system that delivers water to both tribal and non-tribal crossing? I mean, is that an issue?
So I think that, at least as far as I understand, the tribe does not provide water to domestic water supplies to non-tribal members right now. They do deliver water to the town of Ignacio. But the way that happens is I think it's a master pipe. So we provide the water right up to the town line, and then the town itself takes it from there. And then there's a master meter. So I don't think the tribe wants to get into the business of metering for individual houses.
Right. But to expand the system to include more tribal, you probably have to, because of the checkerboard, you've got to cross non-tribal land.
Mhm.
That's,
And it could be private land that belongs to a family, or it could be state land, or it could be other federal lands. So it's just,
Okay.
it's so varied.
Is the community around, because of the checkerboard nature, dealing with the same things in terms of clean piped water?
I believe so. And I think a lot of people have wells. But depending, and I know some of the tribal members have wells, but a lot of them either don't have the money to put in the wells. So then they use the water stations, or there's areas that the water is just not great. And so they'll use the water stations as well.
Is there any precedence for like a joint type of treatment system where there's and I'm just hypothetically thinking like a metering of essentially the water that goes into the system, and some identifying like, okay, this was tribal water, this was a non-Indian water, and I mean, if there's a need for clean water in that area, clean piped water, how can we expand our minds to think about things that maybe haven't been done before or have been done before someplace else, and there's a precedent. I mean, when we go to the universal access for clean water legislation, I mean, this is what they were trying to get is clean water. And I think there's funding and political support there. We know that the checkerboard nature makes it difficult to do things on the Southern Ute reservation. Is there some way that we can maybe do something that not only breaks down the issues for clean piped water, but maybe breaks down the issues for other things?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd have to talk to our utilities more. And I do. So that would be my kind of homework in between this meeting and next, is to talk to utilities about some of these questions that you're bringing up. And then also the water quality question that Celine brought up. So.
And we know with drought that the water quality is becoming worse, both surface and groundwater. There are studies coming out about drought effects on groundwater water quality, and I don't want those folks that do have wells or all of them to have to know that there may be issues in the future and not having, when we have this opportunity to try to figure out how to address some of it. Let's do that. Everybody's to-do list seems like it's getting longer, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, and Steve, because I haven't talked to utilities yet about this specific issue, and I do want to get a meeting on the books because there was another question that was brought up during the last meeting by Celine about the tribal access to clean water. And so this all ties into that. But I think there's also just the cost issue, right? So if it's only one tribal member and their family and they're 20 miles out, is that cost is just so high to put that infrastructure in. So I think, at least I know with Navajo, they had to look at with the Navajo Nation, when I work here, they had to look at like, okay, where's areas that there are multiple families along a line that they can justify that cost.
Yeah, but it seems that, and again, I don't understand the whole situation, but if you do that with both tribal, non-tribal folks, you end up with more areas
Yeah.
that are needed and share the costs and things like that. It seems common sense, but I know there's always bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Yep, and there may be some benefits to something like that could be beyond just the clean water, like the kind of creating something where the surrounding community and the tribes are working on in a unified way for clean water, maybe helpful.
Let's see. Challenges, as we mentioned for the PRIP, are at this point mainly funding. But then there's also, and this may not be something this group could help with, but BIA just needs more staff. I mean, our water resources division staff members end up doing a lot of work that BIA staff members should be doing, and it's because they don't have that staff there. They can't fill the positions. There's no housing for them to draw people to the area to work for BIA there. So that goes back again to the lack of housing, affordable housing, probably. And so it's just kind of all part of that same issue of.
Well, and I think we have to look at if the responsibilities are not being met by the organization or agency that they are intended to be met by, that shouldn't be the holdout to get something done. There should be some way to access the bipartisan infrastructure law funds, whether that's the bucket ones or the bucket twos. I think the not enough staff in BIA, and you all know this, should not result in us not being able to get things done that are required by trust responsibility to get done. So I think maybe staff can't happen overnight, but when we talk about, you have a near-term list, Southern Ute has a near-term list of $12 million over 18 projects that are infrastructure needs. And if there is a concern of failure, the impact of those and what those are would be great. And then the the problem would become far worse if we don't do those. There needs to be some level of response to that. And if BIA can't do that, then we have to figure out where it should come from. And because they can't do that, there should be flexibilities on other things.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking specifically of like bucket 2 funding. Especially I think when you have lists and at least some preliminary work done in terms of identifying the need and at least somewhat of a strategy. I mean, it is rehabbing, right?
Mhm.
In some of these cases, then, I mean, that should be moved quickly on.
Yep, we agree.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's on the to-do list of trying to say, okay, what resources can we bring to the table to investigate where are the downfalls and what other options there are? I know that, I'm looking at, it's interesting because with a lot of what's happening right now with the funding that's in, the unprecedented amount of funding that's in. And I know that there are tribes in the lower basin that are able to access those funds that are not through BIA. And so I think there's some precedent to access these funds. Well, I know it's BIA's responsibility, and I do worry about, okay, if it's through grants, through nonprofits or the state, or does that ultimately set the precedents that BIA, the longer that happens, does the responsibility by BIA change? I don't think it does, but maybe I think we have to look at what's happened in what the other tribes in other areas have been able to access and see if there's anything we can learn from some of that.
I am hearing from tribes across the basin that funding for BIA-owned systems has been a
Nightmare.
multi-decade challenge. My sense is that, the 16 tribes with these systems are all struggling for funding.
So, and that's maybe not a state legislative recommendation, but maybe something bigger than that comes out of this group. It's that maybe there's a recommendation to our senators and Congress people to address that issue. Like the BIA issue, we are hearing it across the board. And so that is a potential legislative recommendation fix I don't want to say is greater than state legislation, because I think a lot of the solutions come on smaller levels, but maybe there's something that we recommend from not just this sub task force, but to the greater task force of united front to recommend to our federal legislators. And maybe there's some resolution or something from the broader group of a push on the BIA issue. And I think we could get other states to work with us on that. And I think we all know, and we talk about the BIA issues, but what can we suggest and say needs to be pushed forward? And people are wanting to do things. And I think this is something that could be a potential option.
And that's kind of where I was pondering. I mean, officially, this is a state task force.
Yeah.
Most of the issues we've been talking about here seem more federal. What's the proper avenue role from the state to the federal perspective? I don't know what the answer is, but I think that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I mean, the five of us sitting here as a subcommittee may not have as strong of a voice. If we take something like this to the broader drought task force and say, here's what we have identified. I mean, we could even do that tomorrow and say, here's what we've identified as something. And yes, it's not a state legislative recommendation. But however, you need to know that this is an issue, and our role as this tribal subcommittee is a little bit different than that broader drought task force in terms of the way that we have to look at things, because there's so much of the federal piece and responsibility there, and say this is something that I think we could stand together on, and the state legislators could be helpful with that also. And while it's not specific legislation, there could be, I think that it provides them an opportunity to be a part of something that could be a solution.
You guys are scheduled to do sort of a report out, I think, to the larger task force. Is it the TOYAC meeting? It's not tomorrow, I don't think.
No, it's tomorrow.
It is.
I think on each agenda for the drought task force, we'll be asked to just provide a update on what the subtask force has been doing. And so far, I think we have had a subtask force meeting before the drought task force meeting. I don't think that will be the case for the next one, but so yeah, we are on the agenda to provide a short report on what we discussed today.
Okay, and maybe not tomorrow, but maybe the next meeting would be nice to sort of have a very consolidated message.
Mhm.
About here about the role of the task force and on the
Can I
federal.
jump in real quick? On agenda?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure you can actually hear me. Yeah, Steve, I think you're asking about the larger tribal water presentation we had talked about.
Right.
Yeah, so that right now we've penciled that in for the 26th, the meeting in Toyac, and then the sub task force will be meeting on the 23rd, and you all will be meeting in Toyac on the 23rd. So right before that meeting.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
So maybe, I'm sorry, maybe a point of that 23rd meeting was really to put together whatever that message presentation to the larger task force looks like.
And we probably have some work to do on our upper basin tribes level. You know that we have that meeting on
Mhm.
our, so I think there's a huge amount of meeting fatigue, but the upper basin tribes are supposed to be meeting the day of the next drought task force. So all the upper basin states and tribes meet.
Yeah, so we're gonna be doing it, at least for Southern Ute. I'll be going to the UCRC and Upper Basin Tribes meeting, and then my alternate will be going to the Drought Task Force
Got it.
meeting.
Which is unfortunate because both are so heavily important and.
Can't you just reschedule?
I,
Teasing.
yeah, that one was scheduled before the other, and I'll tell you, it wasn't the one that's, but, so I'm hoping that there's a remote option for the Toyac meeting so that we can at least step out of the meeting in Albuquerque, or I may have to prioritize being in Toyac. But the issues overlap too, because some of what we may try to do here could be beneficial to the other upper basin tribes.
I mean, I know that we've been talking a lot today about sort of hurdles and hiccups in getting federal money on the ground for supporting those resilient communities that we're talking about. But, you know, when we think about what the main task force is doing and the potential for Colorado to be building the tools that we are going to need in Colorado to weather, you know, what we're facing in the basin, isn't one of the reasons we're meeting as a task force to figure out how, when Colorado moves forward, when Colorado thinks about deploying bucket 2 funds, that tribes aren't left behind. Like, isn't there still a space within the state to say, what are we creating here, and how can we make sure that we don't have another round of tools that the tribes can't access, or another round of funding that has like just these sideboards on it that aren't quite a fit for the tribes. And so we see, oh, we can't actually get those tools or funding working in places in the Southwest basin.
Absolutely. I absolutely. And there may be some state fixes to help with that in terms of classifying priorities or resources that are within the state to make sure that that occurs. And that I think could go to our recommendations. So maybe one tier of that is recommendations for within the state, and then recommendations for positions on the broader federal. Or recommendations for strategy and position on the broader federal.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, just because the tribes are in a different position than other water users in the
Mhm.
state. And so we do need both support on the state level as well as a path forward and recommendations to help with that federal aspect. Or even just to at least bring that to the attention of the Maine Drought Task Force and have that in the back of their minds, and to know what those differences are between the tribes and the other water users in the state.
Well, and if there's a list of things that come out as broader or recommendations from the task force, making sure that this is on those, right? And making sure that there is support for this. Whatever this may be.
Yeah.
I think we have some work still to do in terms of that.
That's the message
Yep.
working on.
If you don't have any other, I'd like to talk a little bit about the policy challenges. And so a few that I have listed that are kind of, it's, a lot of it is, grouped together about ALP, is of course the repayment and the first issue that we talked about last meeting. And then also, another hurdle that the tribe is having is, since like we gave the example, in the perfect world, we would like a pipeline. And, that's going to cost a large amount of money. And so, the tribe is looking at other ways like shepherding and wheeling the water. And also there's a little bit of, I guess, confusion about the leasing portion of the settlement and where the tribe can lease to. And all these policy issues, mainly have to deal, where Ute Mountain is situated, how, where the town of Toyoak is and everything, how the tribe can use this water. And, some of the, I've been kind of hearing of some solutions, that could possibly help, there's not really a tool that Colorado has that Ute Mountain could use. And they talked about water banking, marketing opportunities, and there's other, talk on our tools worksheet, the strategic water reserve, and how tribes have helped the endangered species, but there isn't really a tool that allows Ute Mountain to use its water now. And so, if
I'm wondering if there's what work we have to do to figure out what tools could be modified so that they could be accessed by Ute Mountain or both Ute Mountain and Southern Ute as it relates to water banking or resiliency or whatever that is. But also I think if we get some movement on this funding piece and maybe a piece of that strategy on the funding piece has the pipeline as a listed project also as a pipeline, or at least a pipeline option but I'm not sure that I don't know enough about the pipeline to say that. And specifically that would be something that we should or Ute Mountain Ute should say, is this something that we want to prioritize as a project if there was an ability to access funds that we didn't think were capable of being accessed. And so I think we have to look at some of this funding stuff and see if we can address and solve that, and that could potentially help with that.
Does Ute Mountain know how much that pipeline would cost today? I assume that they knew the price, at the time of the original settlement, but is there a updated price tag on that now?
Peter, do you have?
Yeah, as part of the New Mexico settlement, we've looked at ways of delivering that water to where the tribe needs it, including Four Corners. And so we've priced out various pipelines that could come out of the project. I don't recall what the cost would be for a pipeline that comes directly out of Lake Nighthorse, but that's typically the most expensive option that we have.
Has there been discussions on partnership with local communities in that area on building a pipeline?
Asking me?
Mhm.
Yes, we have. We've met with all the municipalities in Montezuma County to see what the need would be for a pipeline. It seems like Mancos has a need. Cortez probably does, but I think they're going to be able to solve that problem. Dolores probably has a need. Dolores is really hard to get to because they're the furthest out of the way of those three municipalities, but we have spoken with the local governments to see if there's a need for that kind of a pipeline. There probably is a need in the long run, but right now everyone's trying to solve their more immediate problems through other means.
So you had mentioned water shepherding. I think the issue that comes up with that is, well, let's jump back. So in the state of Colorado, does the state engineer have the authority to shepherd water? And then, so he could shepherd that water to the state line, but then you guys would but then Ute Mountain would then need the state of New Mexico to step in to shepherd it to where you need to pull it out, right? So, so it would be an endeavor to then get the state of New Mexico involved. So even if the state of Colorado expanded its ability to help in that area. Sounds like there would be then the need to get New Mexico on board. But maybe that's something the state of Colorado can help with.
Is there any value in asking Kevin Ryan, the state engineer, to attend a meeting to ask some of these more in-state questions, or is that not really applicable?
I think it might be interesting to have a discussion looking at a couple of hypotheticals. The San Juan is such an inherently cross-boundary river, like it goes out of the state and comes back into the state, and what would we be talking about if we had an interstate program that needed to move that water to Powell? Like what are all the authorities that are needed to do that? And then the same about moving tribal water.
There are examples that occurs and it's managed. I mean, the little snake between Wyoming and Colorado is one.
Yeah,
It's managed on an interstate priority system. This is a little bit different, but it is done.
maybe I'm not the right person at the state to have I'd love to tell people what to do, but it doesn't, it's always not always actually what is the role of state engineer's office or division of water resources. And so we may want to kind of ask some questions regarding that.
I mean, if that's the case, we could invite either state engineer's office or DNR to participate in the next meeting. Maybe by Zoom, if they don't have the ability to travel down here to the southwest corner for that subtask force meeting.
Is the main task force looking at tools for shepherding? Is that part of the discussion?
Part of that may be discussed today. Or excuse me, tomorrow.
Don't show up early, Steve.
I'll be busy here, but thanks.
That is another avenue to bring up to bring up that challenge for Ute Mountain Ute.
Definitely.
I'm thinking about the sort of comment about water banking not working for the tribe. Sort of taking a look at the list of tools that the Drought Task Force discussed. What are the challenges for the tribes using existing state tools?
Mhm.
I guess I want to sort of go back to something Peter said. I mean, the tribes looked at or had discussions with Cortez and Dolores and Mancos about sort of sharing a system. To me, that's sort of regional water supply planning. I don't know if there have been any formal work done along those lines, or has that just been discussions?
It's just discussions. There's nothing super formal about it.
Does the state fund studies, regional water supply planning studies? Thank you, Casey.
They do.
I don't know, is that through?
I believe they do, but I mean,
Is that water and power, or is that?
no.
See, okay, I'm just. curious.
CWCB, but I think, I think we have to do some work on where exactly that happens. I was thinking about the rangeland thing too, as being part of that, but and there is some work on that, but I think we need to do some work on figuring out what the best place is to get the funding for the regional water studies. We do.
Okay.
I'm asking some questions right this second on that, but yes. And your former CWCB board member knows that too.
Yeah, and I think that last issue that I brought up for Southern U is a huge policy hurdle, right? For tribes to be paid to forbear future water development for a certain amount of years. Because there's nothing like that right now. And it also kind of goes against the idea of saving water that is being used and keeping that in the system. But I think this is something that all tribes in the Colorado River Basin have been struggling with, is being told that they need to develop that water before they can conserve the water. And it's just that idea that, well, why would the tribes then conserve it if they spent all of that money and effort and resources to start using the water? So I don't think that there are many tribes who would put all that effort in, start using a certain amount of water, and then say, oh, okay, now I'm going to sign up for a conservation program that probably wouldn't pay them the amount of money that they just put into using and developing that water resource. So it's, I think, a interesting situation, but it is something that the tribes that I have heard repeatedly from the tribes in the Colorado River Basin discuss at various meetings. So it shouldn't come as a surprise to many people that this is an issue. But Southern Ute has started pushing it more in discussions and pushing the idea that there needs to be, and I only say Southern Ute because I'm a representative for Southern Ute, so I don't want to speak out for other tribes, but has started pushing this idea more because in the end, it's, I think would benefit the tribe to receive some compensation for all of that water that other water users have been using for decades without payment. And then it would also help provide certainty to the system that there is that certain amount of water that is not going to be developed for whatever certain amount of years. And so that is the idea that needs to be fleshed out, but it is an idea that we are starting to push a lot more in various discussions.
Can I ask the $24 million question?
Mm-hmm.
Have Southern Ute or the tribes in general in Colorado River Basin sort of talked about what their price point is on that water?
No, not yet. I think one, getting everyone used to this idea. Two, trying to get through these policy discussions, bringing it up as policy discussions, because I think that's going to have to be with, again, because it's a tribal issue, with federal agencies as well as the state that the tribe is in. So starting these discussions at every level so that people can get used to the idea one, and then we can start figuring out those specifics. I think that would be a big one under policy.
Lisa, thinking about sort of Colorado versus the Upper Colorado River Commission discussions. You know, what's the first step? Do we need to test this? See how it would work?
Yeah, I think there would need to be a pilot project, whether it's at this within one state or within the upper basin, or, well, I don't know about the lower basin. But I think there would need to be a pilot project to see how it would work, and also to see, to keep that the pool of participants a little bit smaller, so you can figure out what works in a certain area. I think you run the risk of failure if you were to say, and this is just hypothetical, but if you were to say every tribe in the US can try out for this program, I don't think you can write a program for every tribe in the US, right? So it would have to be a sample or a pilot project for a specific area where the tribes are in similar, even if not, they're never going to be the same, but in similar circumstances, so that you can figure out what works for an area. So whether that's upper basin or whether that's specific just to Colorado, to get things started, but that is definitely something we would like to continue talking about with others.
Another thing on the to-do list.
You're not busy in the coming weeks, right?
Yeah.
But,
I'm trying to make notes of what my homework is here. So in terms of homework, as I was just thinking about what I need to do, would it be helpful if I compiled a list of the questions and sent it out to make sure that we're not missing any of these issues that we brought up, and correlate it to who can work on what? Or you can just put your name on it.
Yeah, that would be great.
and I think Kelsey's doing meeting notes for this meeting. Is that correct? So we'll have another set to work off.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Yeah.
You're welcome. I will clean my notes up and try to highlight your to-do items.
Seems like they might be longer than the meeting notes.
They're not short. We
Yeah,
have a lot of work.
that, you know what, that's a good meeting. So I think that's a sign of, if we can figure out what our list is of things that to do, then it wasn't a complete waste.
And Lisa, I can coordinate with you on meeting notes and
Yeah.
your list as well.
Okay,
And it wasn't a waste at all. I was, I'm excited about the next couple of weeks, actually. I think, we may be able to get some movement on some of these things. And provide something to that broader upper basin group
mhm,
too, that could be helpful for the bigger picture.
yeah, and that's the hard part is the overlapping meetings. I
Yeah.
mean, which is unfortunate, but it's because I will have to stay in Albuquerque because I will already be there for our 10 Tribes Partnership meeting.
Yeah.
And then the UCRC is attached to that as well. But I will definitely make sure that, and our alternate Pete watches all of the meetings, so I'll make sure that I work with him and we'll have everything that we need.
Is
For
there
Southern
any
U.
need to try and move that meeting, our task force meeting, so there's not a conflict? Or is that even possible? I don't know.
Well, I mean,
That complicates things.
so I'm not formally on the task force, so I haven't been able to push like date timing, but
Oh, so it's not our sub task force, it's the full, okay.
it's the full task force.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so our sub task force, I think there's some,
Yeah, the sub task force, we're fine.
Okay,
It's
Yeah.
the drought task force.
it's the drought task force piece.
Yeah, it's. And I know it worked best just for the drought task force, just to say, every other Thursday. But for some reason, Thursdays are the busiest for the tribes.
Mhm.
Those are we have a lot of overlapping meetings on those days.
Mondays and Fridays are always much better.
Saturdays and Sundays.
Saturdays and Sundays are generally open.
Okay, so Letitia, do you have any other existing hurdles to discuss?
Financial, we kind of already touched on that in the other discussion, so that's all I have.
Okay. And we have gone over everything that I brought up today, which opened up a lot more questions, so I will make sure to get answers to those questions for the next meeting. And our next meeting is October 23rd from 10 to 1 in Toyac. And our plan was to accept public comments at the beginning of that meeting. And so I think we'll kind of follow that drought task force framework of having the public comments at the beginning of the meeting, and then we can go into our discussion. Do you have information on where the meeting location will be?
It will be in the council chambers. That was on the location
Oh, okay.
available.
I might have missed that.
Will there be a remote option if necessary for that potential, the 23rd meeting?
Yes.
I'm trying not to, but figuring out the logistics. When are you leaving to Albuquerque?
Tuesday.
Okay.
Probably midday on Tuesday. Okay, so let me find, no. Okay, so for the next sub-task force meeting, we had a request to add tribal access to clean water, that issue on to the agenda, so we can put that on the next agenda. And on my end, I will make sure to meet with our utilities, so I have more information for that specific issue and for the so, and that would tie into what we talked about today for the piped infrastructure to piped water to tribal members. And whether it would be, I guess, helpful to add non-tribal members onto that, into that, so that you could get water to tribal members. And then we have the broad topic of potential solutions to the existing hurdles and challenges. And I think that'll stem from all of the homework we have from today. Looking at the list of tools that are brought up in the drought task force, and then all of the specific issues that we talked through. Is there any other topic that came out of today that we would like to add to the agenda?
Just a question about having Kevin Ryan come. I don't know that we made a decision on that, but if we're gonna invite him, I think it could be good to get on his schedule soon.
Or do we wait till we talk about these solutions first? And more refine the questions we have for Kevin, or I don't.
My suggestion would be that, but I would leave it up to the group in terms of what they feel like.
Might be good to get past the upcoming regular drought task force discussion about tools as well to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because tomorrow is the focus, tomorrow's focus, I believe, is on the interstate tools. And then we go back to intrastate to finish that discussion. And I think that's where we need intrastate
Yes.
tools discussion to be finished before we
Okay.
can address all of those questions.
Can I add one thing from my notes?
Yes.
You talked about potentially preparing for that presentation on the 26th at the next meeting. So the tribal water matters and issues for the main task force.
That's right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I will add that to the agenda.
That one's going to be a rough one to miss.
Yes. Okay, so I will also add that to the agenda. And then I think those three things will be pretty, will take up the full amount of time that we have.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will draft the agenda, send it out for your review, and then send it to Kelsey to post as we did this last time. Anything else we need to address?
Thanks for taking the lead on this group.
Yeah. No problem.
Thanks for all the information that both tribes brought, really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, got a lot for the next meeting. Yeah, thanks everyone for being here in person. It helps with the discussions. And we are ending the meeting early today, 10:16 p.m. But I think we have a lot of homework and then we'll have a lot of discussion, good discussion at the next meeting.
10:16 a.m. It's not dark out yet.
Oh, did I say PM? I'm already jumping ahead.
Okay.
All right, 10:16 a.m. Thank you, everyone, for joining today, and hopefully we'll see you at the next meeting.
Perfect.